Hey everybody, it's Matt Drewette-Card from the EdChat Maine PLN. It is Wednesday, October the 5th, 2016. This week on EdChat Maine, we discussed resistance to change. We had a great conversation about, how do we handle change? In Maine, we have a lot of different initiatives going on. We have things like proficiency-based learning, teacher evaluation, RTI, technology integration. We have a lot of things that are happening. There's a tremendous amount of innovation happening here in this wonderful pine tree state of ours. It is the way life should be, after all, as it says on our state sign. We're very humble that way. Yeah. We started this chat this week on this idea of resistance to change, and as I was the moderator of it and I was coming up with the questions for it, I used a model or a framework that I've found is really helpful in my work as a director of curriculum and instruction and assessment. And it was Rick Maurer's work. And it was this model of, because I just found it very easy, very simple to kind of get my head around. And not that it's an easy model to deal with. Resistance to change is really, really complicated. Yeah. But this model of, I don't get it, I don't like you, to me really helped me understand as an educational leader the different places where people are going to be in terms of resistance. And I was recently able to see a new, I don't know how new it is, but this site called energybartools.com that Rick is promoting. And after this chat, Rick actually reached out to me and said, hey, why don't we have a conversation about it? And I said, yeah, great, let's do it. So here we are, Rick. It's wonderful to meet you.
Yeah, same, Matt.
Thank you again for taking your time. I know how precious time is, and people watching this, I hope we can get something out of it. So if you could just take a minute or two, like just a quick couple minutes to go through like this initial model that you originally came up with, and just kind of give a brief overview of it.
Sure thing. By the way, I'd like to start just a hair before that. Sure. I mentioned to you when we were exchanging emails that my life began actually after the Army as a teacher and working with schools, working with kids who were ready to be thrown out. And one of the things that I learned in graduate school, which I still agree with, they said a lot of these kids aren't disturbed, it's the schools that are disturbed. And if you can change schools to be healthier places for the kids and the adults, you'll have fewer kids acting crazy. And I bought that thinking then, I still buy it. But today, after teaching for about 8 years, I went out on my own in the field of organization development. And that philosophy is still the foundation of what I do. Why? When you go into an organization, some feel healthy, some don't feel healthy. How come? And sure. that got me interested in this whole notion of support and resistance and all that kind of stuff, and ended up going back to school to the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. And Gestalt psychology has a unique way of looking at resistance. One thing, they say resistance is just natural. So it's not something to be overcome. It's just there. We react to things. In my terminology, we react by either leaning in or leaning away. And as I started trying to apply this with my clients, I remember one of my big clients at the time was a chemical engineer. And if I started giving him a lot of psychobabble words, that would have ended the conversation. So I started thinking, all right, how do I talk about this stuff in a way that my clients, who tend to be technical people — I'm not, by the way, my first background's in music. How can I talk about that in a way that they get it? And I just started playing around with things, and I started looking at what am I noticing? And that's where I came up with these 3 levels. I had actually was writing this book, Beyond the Wall of Resistance, 20 years ago, and I had one chapter that was going to be on my model of resistance, and I'd written everything else except that chapter, and I couldn't come up with it. And so this may not speak well of me, but at the time we had a nice little bookstore in the neighborhood that had craft beers on tap. So I went
Sounds
over.
good to me.
Yeah. And so I went over, and I think I had one beer, by the way. And I sat there with a blank sheet of paper like I have in front of me now. And I thought, all right, so what is it that I know? And what is it that I think I know? And the idea of these levels sort of came out of that. I think it may have started with 4 levels, and my definition of the hardest level, level 3, I don't like you, had a little bit different definition. But I started playing around with the, as you said, I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't like you. And then I started testing it in my own mind. Is that what I'm actually seeing in organizations? Am I going to, if I went out to you and we're working, with your team in a school, am I trying to force fit that to fit you folks? Or did it seem to reflect what was actually going on? And the more I talked about it, the clearer I got. In fact, my editor called me one day and said, Rick, you're using a lot of consultant words to explain this stuff. Basically, Rick, aren't you trying to say, I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't like you? And I owe those phrases to Leslie Stephen, my editor. I mean, it was just, and people, as just as you did, people remember it. It's,
Yeah.
And by the way, I like in the introduction that you said it's easy to remember, and that does not suggest that resistance is easy to work with.
No, not at all. And that's a lot of the work in my job as a director of curriculum and instruction. We're doing this whole thing on proficiency-based learning, and which is a massive paradigm shift. You said that kids aren't disturbed. It's the schools that are disturbed. Schools have a major systemic problem, and that we have created these walls and these barriers of our kids. I hear teachers, not just in my district, but other places, say all the time things like, kids aren't motivated, which I say, well, that's not true at all. Because this kid is going to go home and work for 8 hours, and then is going to go home on the weekend and spend 48 hours playing video games.
Right.
That's not an unmotivated kid.
Absolutely
That's a highly motivated kid.
Yes.
It's not motivated to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
So they're, in that way, they're resisting what it is that we want them to do. So where is it that they fall? And so, but in terms of proficiency, my role is to kind of help to simplify the concept so that it's easy to remember. You can pinpoint some major areas of it, but to implement it, to do it, it's highly nuanced, highly complex, very individualized.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes a whole level of really a common theme that I see throughout this, you could talk about this too, is there's a common theme of empathy of throughout the different layers and the different models, to be able to listening and understanding who you're working with, putting yourself in their shoes, and then helping build the system around their needs to help get them away from resistance. Is that, am I onto something, or am I off on something?
No. You're absolutely onto something. And so I was talking with a client yesterday, and what she was getting at is how helpful it was for her to get curious about what I call the 3 levels. I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't like you, in herself in relation to the person she's trying to influence. Like, I don't get him. I don't know what makes him tick. And, and what do I think of him? That's as soon as I start asking those questions, I'm right on the cusp of empathy. And I think a key to working with all this kind of stuff is exactly that I have, there's a philosopher, Martin Buber, who talked about I, thou. And one way of thinking about other people is like, because I'm talking to you right now, if I think of you as an it, because he said that's another way of working, you're an object. You're getting in the way of me meeting my goal. So I come up with all these strategies to get you to go along with what I want to do. And he said a much harder thing to do, and something that we fail at time and time again, he said, because it's so hard, is I, thou, whereas I treat you as another human being. And I'm curious about you and your point of view, rather than looking for the weak spot so I can come in and make the sale. And I really believe that, and that all that's based, for me, I believe that's based on empathy and curiosity about the other.
Sure. I really love that I thou. I had forgotten that, because you said you started off in music. I was a philosophy major. So it was all like, oh, yeah, that's right. And it does talk about that a lot. I remember reading him back all those years ago. And that, to me, sounds like it's probably going to be possibly a hashtag that comes out of this. So we'll see. So if you could just quickly summarize the I don't get it.
Sure thing.
The three levels, and then we'll get into how let's do a quick summary of all the levels, and then how can we help those who, once we've identified where we're at, what are some tools we can use to work?
Perfect. Yeah. I call them levels, by the way, because level 1 is the easiest one to work with. Level 2 is harder. Level 3 is hardest. In truth, all three are alive all the time, either working for us or against us. And I'll explain that. So with level 1, I don't get it. It really has to do with information. I see your lips moving and I don't have a clue what you're talking about. So first day of class and a kid walks into calculus class, it's kind of likely that, that you could easily be miles ahead of them and lose your audience. That there's nothing wrong with them not getting it. They shouldn't be getting it. It's the first day of class. But dealing with I don't get it so that people do get what we're talking about, lends itself to clear communication, to good lesson plans, to good presentation skills, all of that. That's what you're shooting for. But the key thing to know about level 1 is just because the other people get it doesn't mean they're going to do anything with it.
Okay.
So I may get that this car you're trying to sell me is perfect, or that it does this and it does that, and I have my checklist. That doesn't mean I'm going to buy it necessarily. And we make that mistake that we think sometimes when we're trying to influence a faculty, that just because they understand what we're talking about means that they're actually going to go along. That happens at the other two levels.
So once we can identify the fact that, they actually understand it, but they're still resisting, then it kind of moves up to the next level of, it's not a level of cognition, it's not a level of understanding, It's a level of, I'm not buying it. It's not that I don't get it, it's that, no, this is wrong.
Right.
Okay,
good. Yeah. So level 2 is the I don't like it. And this is an emotional reaction to whatever the idea is. So it could be a change, but it could be anything that's asking something different of you or me. And that emotional reaction is generally based on fear. And some of the research on fear is that we often aren't aware that that's happening. We aren't aware that our blood vessels are constricting, I guess, that our heart is beating faster, that there's all these physiological things happening that happen way before our awareness, and when you get it to fear at that level, it has to do with survival. There's something about this that really scares me, and I've been a teacher for 25 years, and now they're asking me to change. I don't know if I can do a good job of that. I might fail.
I'm fairly certain that a lot of the people who are watching this right now, who are educators, are nodding.
Yeah, okay.
They're not, because part of the conversation we had on Monday was exactly this. And people said, who are unfamiliar with your model, said, I don't like it sounds more emotional and it sounds more fear-based.
Yes. And
it's really getting to, so that came up as part of the conversation.
Great.
Because in these even small changes, there's a sense of, so I've been doing this for 25 years. You're saying I'm doing it wrong?
Exactly. Yes.
No, we're not saying that at all.
Right.
No one's been saying that at all. However, but the message has already been received. Mm-hmm. So I guess one of my challenges is how can I reframe that message?
Okay.
So that, and if it's already in there,
right,
it's like, it's hard to get out.
Right.
So how can I continue to reframe the message so that it's not about you've done something wrong, it's about something else entirely different?
Yeah. Let me give a partial answer right now, because once I get to level 3, then I can give you a better answer to that. But at level 2, the I don't like it, the positive side of that, where that energy could be, instead of in resistance, could be in support. In other words, engagement, interest, leaning in. Oh, tell me more about that. Oh, so you mean we could do blah, blah, blah. And so one of the things to look for as we're trying to influence other people, whether it's students or our colleagues, is what might grab them at that emotional level. And often, I know, I work like in aerospace and in financial services, place like that, where if you use the word emotions, the meeting closes down. But but the research is, that we make decisions, we make economic decisions based on emotion, and then we justify it with data.
I'm with you, because I interrupt, but I'm at my K4 level, even my middle school level. My teachers will be like, all right, we'll talk about the emotional side of it. But I got to the high school level. You're talking all this touchy-feely stuff. Hang on a second. We're making a lot of emotional decisions. Sorry. But
no. That's great.
Very much related. Everything is, you're like, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
In my daily life.
Yeah. And I think emotion does sometimes we equate it to touchy-feely. Like, okay, turn to the person next to you and hug them. No, stop. That may be swell in some circles. It really has to do with, is what you're saying, does it interest me? Well, I'll give you an example. Somehow I got retweeted that you were doing those calls this week, and you were going to be talking about my model. So I got interested. And then when I found out that you were in education, I am now leaning in. And my resistance to doing anything is I'm really busy right now. And, it was some stuff like, oh, first of all, I really like, it's flattering that you're using my stuff, but also the fact that you're working in education was emotional energy that got me to say, hey, maybe we could have a conversation.
I get it.
Okay, good. Yeah, see, all right, good. And by the way, level 1 and level 2 often get connected together. So when you say, oh, I get it, in that case, it's probably a combination of one and kind of getting kind of whatever the emotional input. Yeah, okay.
I'm seeing that. So, all right, so let's get into the hardest one.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like you.
Yeah.
And I will say for our chat on Monday, this is where everyone said, "Oh no, I don't know," and a bunch of hands kind of went up, and this was the time in the chat. Now I will say, it was kind of late. It was like after 9 o'clock at night, so a lot of people kind of just went off anyway and said, "I can't." But when it really got hard here, I think that people were just like, "I don't really know what to do."
Mm-hmm.
So help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I love it. The level 3, I don't like you, is not quite as bad as it sounds. It's just easy to remember it. I may like you perfectly well, but I don't like you to lead the kind of thing we're about to do. And there may be, and there are 2 reasons for that. One, it could be our history together. I'm not going to say you, Matt, but let's say.
No, use me. I'm horrible.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to use Matt since he's horrible. All right, so Matt comes up with this idea, and I'm thinking at level 1, I understand what he's talking about. Level 2, I'm going, well, that would really be good for our school. So, Rick, are you going to go along? How come? Well, because Matt's leading it. Well, why is that bad? Well, he comes up with a new great idea every 2 months. And he gets all excited, and I sign on, and then he moves on to something else, and there's no time, there's no resources. All right. So it can be that, our history together, or it may have nothing to do with you or me personally, and have everything to do with who we represent. So I don't know how it is in your school districts, but places where I worked, if you came in and said, "Hi, I'm from central office, I'm here to help," that would often be a negative level 3 reaction. As a consultant, when I work outside the United States, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. People, when they hear that I'm an author and I'm from the United States, at level 3, they're not going, "Oh, great, another United States consultant. How lucky are we? I hope my pen doesn't run out of ink. This guy's going to be good." What they're thinking but not saying is, "Oh, no, another consultant. They're arrogant. They got all the answers, and they're probably going to downsize us." So when I walk in, I got to realize that, first of all, I don't think that represents who I am, but I can't say to them, "Oh, by the way, I know your experience with consultants, and I'm not like them." As soon as you do that, you make matters worse. What I have to do is try to demonstrate that I'm different than those perceptions. The key to all of that is I need to know, what are they thinking? What are they saying when I'm not in the room about me or who I represent? And that gets to that, how do you reframe things? That you really need to know, is the trust working for you or against you on this thing? And you've got to use that as part of your strategy.
I like that the trust is do you know, is the trust working for or against? You should see my desk right now. It's just riddled with sticky notes. I'm taking so much information down here. All right, so whereas we kind of go from an informational, we get to a more emotional resistance, then it gets more to emotion/history, to kind of some or preconception. Is that kind of? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I would say all three of you're right in how you're defining them.
Okay.
All three are alive all the time.
Sure.
Okay, either working for us or against us. So if we wanted, and I'm not suggesting it would be a good use of time right now, we could look at our conversation so far and say, so at level 1, are we tracking? Level 2, what's our energy? You know, are you going, oh man, will this guy ever shut up? Or is it working for us? And, is trust building or is it diminishing? Like, I thought it was a good idea to have a podcast with this Maurer guy, but oh man, all of that is always alive, either on the positive or, and it's in, the least little thing can move things in a different direction.
So perhaps then my struggle then is I'm looking at it from too much of a structured way, and that because I was looking at it more of like a ladder structure. I don't get it. I don't like right. You, but it's not that. It is far more fluid, and you can actually go from 1 to 3 to 2 to 1 to 2 to 3 because they're all happening at once
all the time.
And in a moment's notice. If you change a little, you might be going from yeah, I'm with you to I've gone from I'm with you to I don't like it.
Right.
All of a sudden, right away, it all depends on, and it's kind of that being aware. So let's talk about that awareness. And I'd love you also to talk about your energy bar.
Yeah.
Which I've done a little bit of looking into. You just told me about it yesterday, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to dive deep into it. But it sounds fascinating, and it sounds like it's this idea of really understanding and intentionally gauging your audience as to where they are at the beginning. For us teachers, it's a pre-post. It's a pre-post assessment.
Yeah.
So, and you're just kind of doing it for yourself to see where are I, so I can kind of change my instruction, so to speak, or change my system to go forward. That's the impression that I took from.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Let me explain. I think I can explain the energy bar very, very quickly. And if the people watching this just think of a horizontal bar, and on their right side at the far end, just think of the word strong, or 2 words, strong support. And way over on the other side is strong opposition. Okay. So when I'm trying to influence somebody else, I need to identify what's the energy I need from that person or that group, and I'll get more specific in a second, and then what energy am I likely to get? So for instance, you can imagine that there's about a halfway point along this bar, so this side is mostly positive use of energy, and over here is more negative. And on this side, we can have anywhere from really strong support. Like, I need Matt and his team to really be strong supporters for this thing. I need them to revamp how they're doing curriculum. I need them to do this. I need them to do that. That's what I need. Yeah.
What I'm going to do, Rick, I'm actually going to share the screen because I have it up here.
Okay.
Can you see that?
I can.
All right. They can see you too. So this might help in it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
This might help in the conversation so people can actually see what it is you're talking about.
All right. So in the far right is ally. So I'm trying to influence a person or a group, yes, and I need them to be allies, to be strong supporters, champions, whatever. That's a high level of energy I need from them. Just move one over is I need them to be willing. I need them to be willing to try something. Like, take a test drive, Like, just take a taste of this, see what you think. Or could we try it out for a quarter? Something that's easy for people to say yes to to say, oh yeah, that's pretty good, or that I don't like it at all. But it's a different level of support than that far right ally. And then if you move one more to the left, there maybe what you need is them to be interested. That doesn't mean they're going to buy anything or do anything yet, but they're interested in what you're talking about. So the energy, if you will, is leaning in on that entire side of the scale. Are you with me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. I get it.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I found when I was seeing this and watching the video on it and doing a little bit more investigation on the energy bar and how it relates to these models, it does really show that you can, if you want your teachers by the end of, or like if I'm doing professional learning opportunity, if I'm doing a workshop, I want my teachers or my audience to be interested in what I'm doing. I don't need them to be, going out and doing it. I just want them to have a little tweak in their head. But in order to get there, I need to find out where they are to start with, right? Are they there? And if they're there, maybe I can get them to move up.
Right, exactly.
So it's really that getting back to that level of empathy, of understanding our users, our people in the room. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is it we're trying to move forward? Where are they? And then the idea is to get everyone at some point to this level of ally, right? If we're trying to move.
No.
We
may, no, that could be the case. Sometimes I just want people to be interested. So let's say it's the principal of a school. We don't need them to be involved in this particular thing, but they need to go, yeah, that sounds pretty good. So that we'll say, hey, I need to take next Tuesday, and go over to Bangor and do blah, blah, blah. Yeah, great. Go, I guess they're willing to do something, but their interest, they're not complaining about it. They're kind of on your side. And sometimes you just need people just to be willing to do some little things. And then sometimes you need people to be strong allies to really, to shift how they're doing things.
Sure.
Okay. And let me give you an example. Okay. So when I was teaching my first year, I was a resource teacher. So I was assigned to an elementary school, and they had never had somebody like that who was, instead of taking their kids, which were being labeled special education at the time, instead of taking them, here I was going to work with the kids, but I was going to work with the teachers too. That was brand new. I thought this was swell because I was just out of graduate school and I was young, and I think I think I was arrogant. Hard for me to imagine that of myself, but I think I was. And so basically I'm there saying, I want you to change, and you're going to have to change in a very big way. So I'm looking for them to all be strong supporters, be allies in this way. And okay, so that's what I wanted. So I wanted energy to be on the positive side of that bar. But then I have to ask myself, and which I didn't do back then, is where is their energy with regard to working with Rick Maurer? And it could be any of those places that we just went over. They could be allies. They could have been waiting for me their whole life to come in. They could be willing to try something. Or they could be indifferent. That's the first thing on the left side.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not that they're against you. They just, yeah, it's another flavor of the month comes down from, the state or the, Department of Education. Yeah, this is going to be gone. It's probably okay, but I'm just not listening. I got more important things to do. So they're not resisting it. They're just resisting anything that doesn't seem like it relates. The next level of resistance is grumbling. And there are lots of words you could use instead of grumble, but people aren't doing big.
It's perfect.
Okay.
It's perfect. And not just working with professional learners, but in the classroom. Because, really?
Yes.
Really?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not like I'm just like, whatever. It's like, this again. We've done the Civil War 9 times. Really?
Yeah. You got it. Okay. What I love about this model, and what I love about the work that you're doing, and I love, is that it is so applicable to adult change, systems change,
But this gets into, why aren't our students getting engaged in the material? It's because it's all human behavior.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's all about humanity, and it's all about understanding people, and it's understanding the I thou, getting back to that. It's understanding not a student as a product, not a student as another number that you're going to assign a grade to and they're going to move on. This is an actual human being, a person with feelings and emotions that we have to tap into.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 100%. So I want to say more about grumbling.
Sorry, go ahead.
But
I love it.
Okay, at the far end, the left end, is opposition. And this is strong resistance. This means that person or that group are going to be a force working against what you're trying to do. Okay. And so what I need to be able to do is, like, okay, when I went in as a resource teacher, I need to go, all right, so what level of support do I need? Well, it would be nice to start with if they were interested, and then some of the teachers would be willing to try out some of my stuff, because then they can watch, oh, Mrs. Helmick did it, and she seemed to like it. Maybe I'll try Rick. So maybe that's what I'm shooting for. But then I need to say, so where is their energy right now? And because they're different people, they could be in different places. But I need to be able to say, is it they're just indifferent? Is it they're grumbling? Is it they're going to work against me? Is it their interest? Whatever it is, I have got to know that, because now I know what the gap is between the level of support I need. Actually, if you could back up, and I'll be glad to explain what that assessment is in a minute.
Nope, it's fine.
Okay. I need to know what the gap is between the energy I need from them and the energy I'm likely to get, because that gap has to be part of how I reframe things and how I choose my strategy.
So in educational terms, for my peeps out there, this is where we get into the scaffolding. This is where we're going to get into, if we understand where we want them to get to, we do this with assessment. We do this when we're measuring learning. So if we want them to be here, we're going to measure them. We're going to figure out how far they are. And then what we have to do is build and scaffold in both content and complexity to get them to the level that we want them to be at. We have to kind of intentionally design curriculum, instruction, and assessment to get them there. This is the exact same idea. It's the exact same model. Mm-hmm. It's just looking at behaviorism. It's looking at engagement and motivation and the culture of learning that's mm-hmm. happening in our classroom, and how might we intentionally measure and really intentionally change our environment to help support those kids who are at one level to get them to the next.
Right.
So in terms of education, there are incredibly clear parallels.
Okay, good. Well, one thing that I think will also be a clear parallel is that you need to be assessing energy at every step. So it's not enough to wait till the end of the semester or the end of the school year. In terms of energy, like, wow, how did that go over? Man, the kids were ready to riot if I talked about the Civil War one more time. Or, boy, kids were going to sleep, to sleep, and this wasn't sixth period. This is in the morning. Why? That I have a way of working with it. And the example I use in the short video that can tell people about later on sure. is it's like every morning I get on the bathroom scale, and it immediately, within seconds, tells me what I weigh. It doesn't give me a judgment. It doesn't say, oh, Maurer, when are you going to change your evil ways? It doesn't applaud. You don't hear a band in the background. It just gives me a number, and that can help keep me on track or get back on track. By the way, first time I ever said that out loud, it was working with a group. And I said, of course, unless you're like me and you don't like the number, then you keep kicking the scale around the floor until you find a number that comes up that you like, which we do sometimes. We go, yeah, no, that wasn't too bad because Sally over there was nodding her head. She seemed happy. That sometimes we won't believe the information that's sitting there right in front of us. But we need a quick way of being able to stay on track with that. And even waiting 2 weeks is too long.
Too long.
Yeah. So
again, to put it back in educational terms for my peeps out there, this is formative assessment. That's all that this is. We do this for learning all the time. We do this for gauging student learning. We observe, we evaluate. We have them take either short quizzes or short little snippets of things to kind of help us give data and information to help figure out what to do next. Yep. All this is saying, it's formatively assessing the energy it's going to take to get them to the level or to the area of interest or willingness or alliance that they need to be. And so how are we making sure, and it comes down to intent, it comes down to the word validity, how are we making sure that we are doing what we are intending, we're actually doing, we intend to do?
Yeah. So a question you had asked earlier in our call was, how do you reframe this stuff?
Yes.
And okay, it seems like a good place to address that. And the first thing that I do for myself, but with my clients, is I want to know, so where's the energy right now? What are the level 1, 2, and 3 kind of things? Because that's the foundation piece. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was working, a large consulting company used to, what they referred to as parachute me in. They'd be working on a big project with an organization. I would come in, I would teach my the cycle change that I use in these 3 levels and all that. And then their consultants would use that as part of the work with the client. Well, the client was a large telecommunications company, and they were going to be doing something called business process reengineering, which at the time was very controversial. And it really meant going in and just tearing everything down and building it back up. So there was a lot of language like war, when people, that you need to carry the wounded and, bury the dead. And really awful stuff. Anyway, so this group of about 15 men and women were in charge of planning business process reengineering. In a lot of organizations at that time, this is the 90s, if you said business process reengineering, people would immediately go to the negative side of that energy bar. There'd be lots and lots of fear. Okay, so I'm teaching my stuff, and some guy raises his hand and said, "Rick, next week the bomb is going to drop." And everybody in the room went, "Oh yeah, it's going to." And I said, "What?" And they said, "Oh, the bomb is going to drop. What should we do?" And other people were going, "Oh yeah, you're right, Herb. Boy, the bomb's going to drop." And I said, "What's happening next week?" And they said, "We're holding a meeting." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "It's an all-day meeting." I go, "Yeah." And they said, because I'm not hearing where this catastrophe is. And they said, "It's our first time to talk with kind of the key decision makers in the organization about what our draft plan is." And, "Oh, they're going to hate it, Rick. It's going to be awful." And people are just, why? And they said, "What should we do?" And they're looking at me like I had some answer. And I knew as much about their situation as you do right now, which means I knew hardly anything. And out of desperation, which is where most of my good tools come from, I said, "Hey, how about this?" I said, "I'd like each of you to think of somebody who's going to be coming to that meeting as a participant." Yeah. And you'll never say their name out loud. What's going to be on his or her mind when that person walks in? And so then I had a flip chart, and I just started writing down what they said. I had no idea what I was going to do with this information. None at all. I just needed data. And people started telling me this stuff. And as I'm making this list, I realized what I was going to do with it. And I said, okay, so hey, we just talked about level 1. People don't get it.
Right.
Use a green marker. Let's underline those things that are level 1. Level 2 is an emotional reaction. Let me use the red marker. And level 3 has to do with lack of trust or trust. Let me use a blue marker. So now it's color coded. And this guy said, "Oh, that's why the bomb is going to drop." And everybody looked at him, including me, and said, "What are we talking about?" And he said, "Look at that list. Only maybe 10% of the things on that list are informational, level 1. We've designed an 8-hour meeting to deal with level 1, facts and figures, timelines, and all of that. Their concerns walking in the room are level 2, emotional, and level 3, lack of trust. And if we don't, no wonder the bomb is going to drop." And everybody said, "Man, that's right." And here's what they did brilliantly. the internal consultant, Ross, and me, they turned to us and said, could we take the next hour and redesign that meeting? And we said, sure. And they turned their chairs around. I don't think they called on Ross or me at all during that hour. They took the same meeting, the same cast of characters, the same bad coffee and snacks, whatever it was, and said, how do we make this a meeting that in some way is going to get to facts and figures? It has to, but does it in a way that seriously takes into consideration the emotional reactions and perhaps can help build something positive? And how can we approach that meeting in a way that might actually build their trust in us as opposed to diminish it? And they did brilliantly. And the meeting next week, I was told, went very, very well. And it isn't that 100% of the people came around, but a lot of the people were with them. And so by knowing the level 1, 2, and 3 and knowing where the balance was, they were able to just use their own resources to come up with something they knew would work in their own culture. Now, I'm glad to be more specific about kinds of techniques, but what I call the list is key to all my work with clients. In fact, there's an ebook that it's mentioned somewhere on this website, and it's free, and it's called The Magic List, and it shows people how to gather that information and then how to interpret it once you've got it. So,
The Magic List?
The Magic List.
Put that on my list of plugs. All right, so I only want to have a couple more minutes left, because we've been going a little long here, but that's great. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you again.
Wow.
What kinds of tools or supports would you recommend educators, both teachers and administrators, if they're looking to use parts or elements of this model, how might they be able to start applying some of this?
All right.
In their daily lives?
Okay. So first thing is this website that you pulled up, which is really simple, energybartools.com. And the first thing you'll see is a screenshot of an animated video. And the video is 3 minutes long, and it explains what the energy bar is. So that would be a good review. Well, I guess you don't see it first. You have to hit start here first, or start now, and then you'll see the video.
I'll definitely link to this in the blog post.
Okay, and then after you've seen the video, there is an assessment, and you can click on that. Once again, you don't have to leave your email address or anything. And the assessment has 3 questions, and it says, "Are you willing to be influenced by these other people?" That's critical, because if not, your options are you're either going to try to force people to do it, or you're going to try to manipulate them, or you're going to give up.
Right.
Those are the only other options I know of. So if you're willing to be influenced, then the second question is, what level of support do you need from this individual or this group? And the third question is, where is their energy today? And it could be any of those 6 items, but below it is also a question mark, and it says, I don't know where their energy is. And that's a legitimate answer. And then you click done, and you will get an answer page that says, all right, given that score, that mixture of 3 scores, here's the situation you're probably facing. If that's so, here's some resources. Click here for the ebook called The Magic List. Down at the bottom of most of the pages, there are like 2-minute videos where I tell a story to illustrate how somebody's using this kind of stuff. The one other thing is up in the menu bar, which you can see up by our pictures on the screen.
Yep.
There's a thing called podcasts and webinars, and I just did a podcast with a friend of mine yesterday, and it'll be posted probably in a week or so. He's in advertising, and I wanted to talk with him about energy, not getting something on TV, but how do you get something through the ad agency and with the client when you think you've got a great idea. And he talked for maybe a minute, maybe 2, about the idea itself, and the rest of our call, which lasted about an hour, which I'm going to edit down, was about how do I create the conditions so that my idea has a chance of surviving.
Sure.
And he, more than most of my corporate clients or nonprofit clients, really understood the importance of the overall context. So part of that would be, you, Matt, when you're walking into work with other adults, what are you walking into? Are they saying, wow, Matt's here, that's great, or somebody's here from that group, that's not so good? Who do I need to influence? Who's going to be hurt by this? Who's going to be helped? who's going to be threatened. And he said, I hole up in a hotel room for about 3 days before I ever go meet with the client. He said, and basically what he's looking for is history, context, all of that. I've heard my clients spend lots of time doing that, talking about the idea and how do I mold the idea, but not about the overall context. And I think his name's Dave Woolard. He's an old college friend of mine. I think what he has to say is actually quite brilliant. But there's some other podcasts up there too. So, and those, once again, you don't have to sign in. I didn't want a website where you had to give information if you didn't want to. And then there is a thing you can join on Contact Us called the Energy Bar Group, and that's free. And that's a place where I try out new ideas first. I go to that group and say, hey, here's an idea. What do you think? So, well,
this is amazing, Rick. I can't thank you enough for taking some time to talk with us and with our little educational group that's up here. We call ourselves a little ragtag group of just people who kind of come together just to kind of help connect and collaborate, educators across Maine and beyond. Again, your website, energybartools.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Rick Maurer, RickMaurer2, Rick Maurer 2, right?
Right.
You see that also on the website or on here, contact information down LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Booked Beyond the Wall of Resistance and The Magic List. And thank you again for your model. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me and with us. And I really, really appreciate it. This has been enlightening.
You're welcome. I had a ball.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.